Welcome to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, the podcast for high achievers who want to stay sharp, focused, and full of energy despite their diagnosis. With your host, National Board Certified Functional Medicine Health Coach, Julie Michelson, where Julie helps you take your power back from autoimmunity. And now here's your host, Julie Michelson.
Welcome back to the Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast. I'm your host, Julie Michelson, and today we are joined by Andreanna Rainville, registered nurse and nutritional counselor and scientific advisor for SNP Nutrigenomics. In today's conversation, we are talking about empowerment through epigenetics. Nurse Andy shares the advanced testing and custom nutritional supplementation that's now available to give you the foundational support that your body needs on the genetic level to reverse or prevent symptoms and improve your overall health. Andreanna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much, Julie. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
I am so looking forward to our conversation today. And I always love to start with story because I think especially what you're doing now, and I know you're not new to this world, but it is so cutting edge. It's like, well, this couldn't have been your goal when you were a little girl. So share a little bit of your journey with us.
I would love to. So as a new nurse, which was, like 25 years ago, I got to work in German functional medicine. That was sort of my starting ground, which was different. It was a lot of homeopathy, a lot of physics, a lot of philosophy, as well as the basics of looking at, the 5 levels of healing. And in that opportunity, I got to meet amazing patients. So it really started with necessity of people would come in with very intense, complex cases that we really, didn't always know where to start with. And one family in particular was just, high school sweethearts, trying to have babies, married, trying to have babies. And they were just having the heck of a time to conceive. And, we went down the heavy metal track and we went down the mold track and we kind of went through that deductive reason that all of us do in functional medicine. And we're stumped. And, we got a bit of dental work cleaned up and toxicity under control and infections under control. And they were able to conceive. And unfortunately, they then lost their baby. And it was a shock, to see a pneumonia problem. And I'd never really kind of experienced that. And that was really when, that was in early 90s, and genomics were we weren't even done with the genome project. And, we were trying to figure out, okay, what is going on with this weird situation? And it led us into genetics. And so we were kind of going, okay, there's a methylation problem, but even bigger, there's a sulfation problem. And okay, let's try this again. So we were trying to sort it out, and they got pregnant again, had another child, and lost that second child, which is just such a heart wrench, when you feel like, this is a dream and you're watching it so close and then slip away. And, and so we really dug into it on a deeper level and then tied it back to what we knew about, toxicity in particular and functionality of how the systems in the body work. And at that point, it was really complicated because there weren't a lot of people doing it. We had Amy Yasko was kind of coming out in the autism world barely, and Dr. Anderson was doing some stuff. And, Ben Lynch hadn't even showed up this was like way back when. And so it was trying to look at these huge lists of numbers and letters and try to tie it into what does this mean? What can I do with this? And it was definitely challenging in the beginning, but they were able to conceive and then have a child, and then they had 3 more babies. And so it was that piece where I was like, okay, I don't particularly like this because it's complicated and it's cumbersome. But if we could figure out how to make it easy, and if we could figure out how to make it affordable, and how to make it not the doomsday measurement, because so many people got
Right.
into that part.
Genetics is your destiny, which we know is so not true.
No, definitely not. And, it's not our destiny by any chance, because epigenetics, like, I'm a big Bruce Lipton, friend and follower, as well as like Lynn McTaggart, Rupert Sheldrake. These were people I got to meet in different places of work throughout history. And I really believe that we do have the ability to turn things on and off in our body, but sometimes it's easier for some than others. And we're not really, the world we live in today is not exactly what we were designed to live in. And so even when people are doing things so right, if you don't know some of those foundational pathways that might be needing more support versus others, it gets very hard to know how to focus your time and energy with epigenetics.
I love that. I love that you said that. And I think obviously lifestyle wise, there are things that all of us can and ultimately should be doing, whether we are or not. But I love that you're, focusing on, okay, but some of us need to pay attention in, specific areas, and some of us get leeway in those same areas. And so I know you refer to it as your user manual, right? So, what, tell me a little more about the kinds of information and how actually usable it is for people.
Definitely. So a lot of us, humans are complex. We're this beautiful, amazing design that we can't replicate, right? It's just such a perfect system. And if our bodies have the right, foundational nutrients, if we have the right electrical functionality within our system, if our cognition, our mind is in that right set, if we're right with our clan, things really flow well. And it's, only been in the last 100 or so years that we've seen this huge rise in all these weird chronic illnesses that were never here for hundreds of thousands of millennia, and
Well, I
so
was
it's like,
even thinking, you were talking about early 90s and autism. I actually taught at Nova Southeastern University's School for Autistic Children in the 90s, and it was so rare back then. And I think we had one girl in our class, which was typical, but it was a really rare, just in my short lifetime, my short actually adulthood,
mhm.
the 30 years or so I've been an adult, just the rate of all of it. When I was diagnosed with autoimmunity in my 30s, I was told, oh, you're so young. And now, oh my gosh, the autoimmunity rates in peds it's insane.
No, it is. And
Yeah,
it used to be like, oh, well, were you born with this? If you weren't necessarily born with it, it's probably an acquired situation. Well, now we're seeing kids come in born with it. And that's unheard of. That's not a new thing. And so we really started trying to go, how can we, and I love that, there's so much data out there, but data can be overwhelming.
sure.
And
Well, and
especially if
what
it's
do you do with it?
exactly, well, we would have patients come in with a suitcase full of pills, and you're like, okay, if you need an Excel sheet to know when to take your supplements, you're taking too many supplements.
Right.
Like, there's no pill that's just going to fix it. So, you know, I was blessed with lots of folks that had besides the wonderful autism community, which has been before autism, it was mostly heavy metal and chronic pain was kind of my focus. But then that led into Lyme disease, and then that led into autism. And then in the last decade or so, it's really blossomed into a lot of folks that had, it started off with multiple chemical sensitivity, but then it kind of became mast cell activation and different kinds of a lot of intolerances, and just being shocked at how many debilitating allergies were happening. And,
Mm.
and kind of, and I went down the track of trying to chase one gene at a time. And that's just a bad situation. So,
That sounds
so
like a Western medicine approach.
shockingly, well, I am Western medicine trained
That's the
as well.
training, right? It's maybe it's this thing, this one. Well, and I used to say, we have to look for the root cause, right? In the singular. What's the root cause of your autoimmunity? And it's like, oh my gosh, it's never just one thing. It goes back to that. Some of it's a bigger factor than others, but it's always more than the one. And I'm guessing you found it was more than one gene involved.
Well, and that was kind of a tricky part too, because you could look at thousands of genes,
Right.
or you could look at what we call actionable genes. I don't want to look at something I can't do
We
something
can't fix.
about.
Yeah.
Like that's just depressing,
Yeah.
And genes have kind of been, misunderstood in thinking that, oh, it's if you have this one gene, you're destined to have this problem. And it doesn't really, like, there's a small percentage that is true. But most of them are, you can work around them. You could biohack them, or you could do a bypass. And that's where nutrition is so exciting. And, yet, I can't eat 10 pounds of broccoli to make my CBS work correctly. I can't, support certain things just because my lifestyle doesn't allow me to. So when I started working with SNP, I was thrilled that it was focusing only on actionable genes. And although we test about 95 genes, and I love that, working in pediatrics, if I could not poke a kid, I'm always happy to not.
Yes.
So it's a simple cheek swab where basically you're taking a Q-tip essentially and going inside your mouth on each side, and then you pop it in the mail. And about 3 weeks later, you get these wonderful, well, I think they're wonderful because I wrote most of them, with Dr. Price. Like, I'm one of the scientific advisors, but we've had the pleasure of getting to work with so many brilliant people and it's never ending. It's like, as we learn more, we want to make it better always. So what we tried to do is get rid of the 50 bottles of stuff. So you as an individual do your testing. We look at what the SNPs are. SNPs is just a term. It's called single nucleotide polymorphisms. And I think about it, if you're writing and you have a spelling mistake, that's what a SNP is.
Love that.
Where a gene is more like you don't have that page in your book that you're writing. So some people have these mutations, and they change how pathways work. And so what we tried to do is really make common sense. How does this affect your inflammation? Because we know that's a key for many, many chronic illnesses.
Sure.
How does it affect your oxidation? How does it affect your gut health? Those microbiome that we have, more microbiota than cells in our bodies. So we want to keep them happy too. And your mood, your brain, because if you can't have motivation because your neurotransmitters are off, it's really hard to do the things you need to do to be healthy.
Right.
And of course there's other things like heart health and immunity and those different parts. And so we broke it into 11 different systems in the body and actionable genes that are tied to those systems. And the cool part is when you do what we call your core 19 genes, we have technology that takes your results from the laboratory to our manufacturing facility in Texas, and it custom compounds the nutrients to the milligram to support all of those genes, which is kind of a cool, when you think about it, is pretty amazing because there's over 400 million different combinations that can happen. So it's truly precision to you and your needs. And it doesn't end with that, like that's what I call our insurance policy. It's just to support you foundationally. If you catch a flu or a cold, you're going to need support outside of that, but your immune system should be functioning more optimally because if you have genetics that are directly affecting your immunity, we're supporting those. And so it's pretty exciting in a lot of different ways.
So if somebody, this total like just curiosity question, I'm thinking, oh, and we've got the peanut gallery chiming in. We use a lot of testing and supplementation where needed, right? And I'm one of those people who I don't, you hear about all these popular supplements and people jump on the bandwagon, and I think everything you do should be targeted to you. And so say somebody is working with a functional medicine doctor and they're getting regular lab work and they've got supplementation prescribed, accordingly. This, it sounds like, would just work hand in hand, that there's not really any big conflict. And are you getting, when somebody receives their custom supplements from you guys, is it obvious? I'm assuming they know what's in there so that they're not taking too much of something, or okay.
No, exactly. And it's super interesting to me because like we can go off of, what kind of CoQ10 you do better with. Do you need ubiquinol or ubiquinol? Do you need it oxidized? Can you get away with either? So that's based on your NQO1 gene, of what form works better for you. Or also vitamin D. Vitamin D is so critical to so many thousands of different processes. But if you can't absorb it, then, or you can't convert it or you can't transport it, then you need a certain amount of support to make that happen. And that's not just giving vitamin D.
More
There's
D,
other,
right?
and more isn't the way to always do that.
Right.
Sometimes we have to do, and we talk about how red light therapy can happen with that. So not only do we give you a supplement support, but we also give different kinds of epigenetic ideas. And it's really not that anyone has to do all of them, but it's like sometimes you just need a little bit of motivation onto something new because you're in a rut with your epigenetic healthcare program. And what I like about what we do is we help you focus. Like if you do methylation, great, then great. Your body's got that covered. Let's focus on your inflammatory pathway. And a lot of these SNPs that we measure, we also give a list of what lab work helps to show, are you expressing it correctly or not? So that you've got some objective standpoints. And I always tell people, do your labs beforehand. And then after 120 days of being on your supplementation, retest. Like, there's a lot of symptom surveys that we could do subjectively.
Sure, but it's also really good to see the data too. So I think it's always really good. Most important is how you feel. So I love that you said that. That's the goal. My goal is never for anybody to have the most beautiful lab work. I was one of those people when I was at my sickest, that they were always like, your labs look great. I'm like, super, I can barely function. So it's only a piece, and definitely symptom expression is number one, how we feel. But I have become such a data geek, and it is really nice to track. It's not just nice, I think it's essential, especially whether you're taking supplements or medication or both. Or, if you're somebody who really doesn't need. I was laughing when I don't methylate well, I don't detox well, I have, very overactive inflammatory, but like you name it. I would love to be one of those people that could just, not supplement and be fine, but I'm thrilled to be off of my prescriptions. So it's like I think that blend, it is important to track and to know what's going on in your body.
For sure. And also that helps us kind of, again, focus in more, because if you find that you've done foundational support and yet you're still having glitches in a system, then that means there's some kind of epigenetic thing that isn't happening to the extent that you need it to happen. And that's, for me, I look at all of this as empowerment. It's if I
Absolutely.
know, I can't focus on everything, unfortunately, as much as I want to. But if I know where my key factors of needing support are, then I don't have to waste the time and energy on the things that my body does well. I
Right.
can really focus in on, hey, you've got this gut issue that you need to get fixed. And then when you do that, all these other systems fall into place because, like genes, everything interconnects. And
Right.
we have to have this symbiosis and support it, and to be able to see it in actuality. Like, for a lot of people, oh, hey, wait, you have this genetic that means that gluten's just not, even in Italy, it's not going to be great for you. It's like, it helps us to understand, or maybe you just need more enzymes to break it down because of X, Y, and Z that's happening in your body. Or if you detoxed a little bit more because you don't have the right genes to do your detoxification, and we live on planet Earth. So
Right.
it,
Dirty
you
earth.
know, you breathe water. I love it when people come in and they're like, no, I have a really clean diet. And I'm like, that's great. Do you use water? Do you breathe air? And
Right.
we're getting ready for forest fires. And
Yeah.
I mean, I'm blown away how people's heavy metals always go up as the fires happen,
Yes.
and they're not doing anything other than breathing the air, and even filtered
Right.
breathe, so trying to really help people see this is just to empower you and give you foundational support. And like we were talking about with your, we would love more and more functional providers to join our teams, because we are doing ongoing research and working with, the different systems of the body and helping to support people, because it's really about, I want a healthy world to live in. And when people don't feel well, they don't always act their true self. And
Mm.
I just want to see everybody blossom into the light that they all are, and really be able to have the energy. Like, I need energy to run. I have 3 grandchildren, and they're
Wow.
exhausting, so you gotta, like, keep up. And I also had a child late in life, and so I have a 14-year-old too. And,
Wow.
we've
Busy
got
lady.
just a lot of interest in the world going on. And so it's like, I don't want to live to be 100 and, just enjoy the nursing home. I want to be like having them trying to keep up beachcombing and making, art, and
That's
living a
that
full
that
life.
word health span, right? It's not about being
Exactly.
old. It's about I had said, and I'm like, oh, that was maybe the best thing that ever came out of my mouth on this podcast was or actually it might have been on somebody else's podcast that I said it first. But I wanna live young until I'm done. Like, period.
Exactly.
That's
Yeah.
I've already been in that other place where I have the ability, the energy, to do the things. And now that's all I want to do. I want to do the things. So
Well,
I love, so we're talking about it through this lens of course, autoimmunity, chronic illness, all the things, right? Whether it's toxicity, autism, you just pick one. It's all rampant, right? And it's all chronic inflammation conditions, or all conditions driven by chronic inflammation. So we could throw Alzheimer's and dementia in that pool
yeah.
as well.
Well, type
Really,
3 diabetes is
yeah,
what they're calling it now. And
yeah.
so if we can look at how, and it's amazing how much mitochondrial dysfunction has blown up in the last
Oh,
15
it's
years.
huge. It's huge.
Compared, I didn't see that before. And so if we can look at, how do you tend to do on a mitochondrial level? Can you make ATP? Just like,
Right,
if you can't make gasoline, it's really hard to do all the work we have to do.
right.
And, and so but if you do have a little glitch there, that's the joy. Nutrigenomics is amazing because it's just blowing up in how can we use different kinds of nutrients that we can't necessarily get because we're not gardening. We're not doing it as much as we used to.
Well,
Let's just
and even if we are, soil's depleted and
yeah. Well, it's
yeah,
kind of amazing how it's evolving though. And so if you could focus in on how do I support these factors? And I know that, okay, when I start to feel a little bit worn down, what's my sleep doing? Am I
right,
doing the different epigenetic support measures so that I can blossom, do
right,
what my body's meant to do? And it's amazing how, given the right circumstances, given the right nutrients, given the right mineral depletion, or if we're talking about soil depletion,
right.
I can't I used to go to Boulder Fest with Robert Cran in Colorado a lot, up in Boulder. And we, 20 years ago, we were talking about how horribly depleted the soil was
Right.
from, comparative to 100 years before.
Right.
And we're trying to get, luckily there's a lot of people doing something about it. We've got Paul Stamets has done some amazing things with, using mycelium to support it. So I always try to find the good.
Right. It's not doom and gloom. And that was
No.
actually what I wanted to touch on. We're talking about using nutrigenomics to, in essence, help fix, right? We're generally my audience is already symptomatic, or they were. And
Mhm.
so we're looking at a correction, right? Switching something off that we've already switched on, and we want to change that.
Mhm.
But the beautiful thing is you can totally use it for prevention as well.
Yes.
And that's the truly, I was going to say that's the truly exciting part. It's exciting on both levels. This whole idea, oh my gosh, imagine the body can heal even once it's exhibited all of these symptoms and seeming decline. But to be able to get that information that you said, it is power. And just say, okay, this is my potential. And so I know I really want to focus on X, Y, and Z so that I don't ever exhibit any of those things and I don't end up with a label.
Yes. And, even our founder is an amazing human and, went for 10 years with an autoimmune disorder that was never diagnosed.
Mhm.
And just kept being told, oh, it's, probably a
Is
Prozac
it
deficiency.
maybe in your
And
head? Yep.
yeah, and it's like, nope, it's never a Prozac deficiency ever.
No.
And we may need those tools to help us get to a point where we can kind of function in another way while we're building other parts. But it was amazing when she actually started, being on her custom compound. Her lab work balanced out. Her doctor was able to see, oh wait, you do have, 4 different inflammation genes, your CRP, your interleukin 6, your tumor necrosis alpha. Like, these are things we can see in labs also. So if genetically they're not working, we could use those labs to see, well, how is whatever I'm doing functionally helping me through this glitch. And then a dear another person who actually introduced me was a mast cell patient who had been, like, it was not an uncommon thing. I'm like talking to the ER docs, like, don't do that. She's
Right.
gonna crash on you. You don't do that, And so, to watch these beautiful women be able to, take trips with their families,
Yes.
eat, have more freedom. Like, can you eat everything all the time? No. But can you have a party and survive it without weeks of being bedridden and pain
Right.
and agony afterwards? Yes. And and that was just so inspiring, and to really kind of see this heartfelt movement of how can we make this easy? How can we make it accessible? How can we make it affordable? Because, it's expensive to be ill. Like, I'm shocked anymore at,
Well,
I
and
love
that's
kids.
the story we all need to flip. People will say, it's expensive to test. It's expensive to take supplements. Oh, it is really expensive to be ill. It is. I mean, I went through a phase where I couldn't work. It's expensive.
Yeah. Well,
So,
and emotionally expensive, and to your family,
oh yeah,
just in not being able to do the things that we are meant, where this gift of a life is not to just survive.
yeah.
So
We're not supposed to just exist, to
no, and
truly
so
live.
yeah, in that full whatever that means to people, and it's super exciting to see the evolution of wait, we have answers. More and more answers are coming to us all the time. And to help, and many times we have to help our healthcare practitioners. Like there's a lot of great healthcare practitioners, but all of us are sort of trained to look at what's wrong instead of what's right. and
Right.
and we can, as we all collaborate, we keep bringing in, hey, these are new ways we can measure things. These are new ways we can support things. And it's an ongoing experiment together. And I think that my patients have always been my biggest teachers. I've been blessed to
Sure.
work with amazing practitioners all over the world, but really it's the patients that
Yeah.
help you see
In the
what actually
trenches.
works.
Yeah.
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 And, and we're not, and, I loved working with kids because kids are not really like, they're not
No
entrenched
filter.
in what they, no filter. And placebo doesn't work so well on them. So it's like they're happy to let you know, I feel good or I don't feel good,
Right.
but they're also easy to kind of help drift back into that wellness model. And so, now being able to do that for more, because I'm always like, if mom doesn't feel good, it's really hard for the household to feel good. So
Sure.
let's, and dad too. I mean, it's not to say one or
Right.
the other,
Right.
but we all have to kind of, take that health responsibility of how am I going to live as healthy as possible for myself and those around me.
Well, and what I so love about this is the individualization and personalization, customization.
Hmm.
People say that to me all the time. Well, just tell me what to eat, right? Or tell me what to do, how did you heal? And I'm like, so take a family. Yes, we share some genetics, but there are going to be differences. And so again, that knowledge is power. And oh my gosh, the gold of being able to know from the time your children are young,
Hmm.
the support they need to avoid where so many of us either are or have been over the last decade or so, with chronic illness is just it's so empowering. And as a mother, I know we tease all the time. My oldest is celiac, and I used to feed him saltines, but way back when, like who knew,
It
and
was part of
whole
the brat
whole
diet.
wheat
Why
bread.
not?
You were trying to kill me, whole wheat bread. And so, there are so many tools available
Hmm.
now
Hmm.
that, not that I'm, wanting to have more children in my 50s right now. But I would definitely do some things differently, and my kids get to do things differently for their
Yeah.
children. And that's why we do what we do. It's, just changing the generational story of wellness, is so much fun. So what is a step that people can take today to
Hmm.
just,
Well, what's kind of nice is we've put the power into everybody's hands. So
yeah,
you can either work with a practitioner who does use SNP Nutrigenomics, or you can simply go to SNP, it's SNIP, and then Nutrigenomics and .com, and you can order your own test kit. And it's really simple. Like I said, you get a envelope comes to you, you do a cheek swab, you drop it in the mail, and there's a, you know, postage pre-addressed thing, so there's no shipping fees or anything. It's not like some lab samples where you have to refrigerate it or freeze it or do anything. It's more like a
easy.
paternity test. So you swab and you send it off. And what's kind of cool is we never sell any of your data. Some people are worried about that because there
Yeah,
are some companies that do that. And you become, so you get a number and you create an online portal on your internet, and the lab receives only what your sex is, because that's kind of, X's
Essential.
and Y's important. And that's what you were born with, not necessarily what you identify with. And so, although we respect that, it does kind of mess up your genetic testing. So you have to be whatever you were born with is what you list. And then in about 3 weeks, you will get an email that is all of your beautiful reports. And you get 11 different reports on all of the different health systems. And then you get what we call your code complex report. And I always recommend people, you could either do powder or a pill. I kind of like a powder because I could just mix it in with my juice or my tea.
See,
or
I'm a
my
pill person because I'm
and
a
it's
water
whatever your
drinker.
preference, whatever your preference is. And what's kind of exciting is that, and everyone's like, well, what does it taste like? And you're like, well, mine tastes different than yours. And so I don't
There we
know what yours
go.
will taste like. But we do, everything is third party tested. So we do organic wherever we can. There are, different kinds of vitamins and minerals and different kinds of herbs and nutrients that are all in it. And what's kind of fun is there's like specific boosts, is what we call them. So let's say you have the CRP gene, which is an inflammatory gene. If you have one mutation versus two, you get a different amount of nutrients.
Sure.
And so it custom compounds that out to you. And it takes about 10 days from when your test is done to get a little bottle shows up at your house, and it's got your name on it, and it's your special mix. And so, and then, you start, like I said, I always like people to do the labs according to the system that they're concerned about. Because you might be concerned about autoimmunity and someone else might be concerned about heart health. So we've written down a whole list of these are the common labs to monitor,
Or
brain
you can
function.
be like me and do full panels.
Well, and
we like to look at all of it.
There are many full panels.
Yeah.
And it's just, of course, a recommendation list, but it's that way. And then we know that 120 days is a cell cycle. So most people are going to drastically feel a change within that, but your genetics don't change.
Right.
So like these are things until you get your epigenetic world perfect. This is the support for those things that aren't quite, going the way they could be going. And I always tell people this is your multivitamin, and, but it's going to have your methylated Bs, it's going to have your CoQ10s, it's going to have your vitamin D, your vitamin K, your basic functional nutrients that humans need to function well. Now, if you're on a medication that depletes magnesium and B6, which most of them do, you might need a little extra added into that. So it's not to say this is to replace everything else. It's not. This is foundational support to help you function the way your body's designed to function. And there's we have a bunch of different things. So there's a 30-day money back if you don't want to do it. 30 days is a little bit short to see real results in people. But, if you're just like, I can't do this, that's cool. You just, contact the company and they refund you, because, it's really about how can we help. And we just are, excitingly, we're releasing a new extended methylation panel. And, I'm always looking at, because we do have 95 SNPs genes that we are looking at, there's a bunch more coming out on, gluten, on procrastination, on thyroid, other systems that are not the foundational systems of your body, but are often things that people want to know.
Sure.
And I love that there's a solution, though. It's not just data that you then have to kind of go, what do I want to do
now
with
I have
this?
to go spend $3,000 to find somebody who can help me do something about it. So,
Exactly.
or the whole, it means nothing. And it's, so it's exciting. And it so directly ties into every other conversation we've had on the podcast, as far as, this is where we take control and take our power back. And I love having the spotlight, whether it's to correct or prevent. It's the same. So it's amazing. So if somebody wants to know, I know you gave us the website already, but if somebody's like,
Yeah.
wow, Nurse Andy is just the bomb, where do they find you?
Well, I'm Andy at snipnutrition.com. And I also, it's been quite an amazing, we have a YouTube channel. I do a lot of blog posts for, on the SNP Nutrition website, what are healthy fats, different things like that. So those are different ways of doing that. And then also, I'm Andy Rainville. So, I have a website also, and it's just amazing. And, my whole goal is always empowerment. I want to
Yes.
help people know you've got this because your body is designed to really do well. And if you just kind of find the right little pieces together, no matter where you are right now, it can be better.
I
And
love
and
that.
to remember that and to kind of embrace that. And so there's more, we're doing all kinds of educational things for both practitioners and, lay people as well. And it's just an evolving area that I'm so thrilled to be part of.
Well, it's super exciting. It is an amazing time in wellness. I don't even want to say medicine, like just wellness,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because again, we can use all of this new information to prevent decline. And so I think it's great. I can't wait to play with it. I have done a variety of other genetic testing, but I love this idea because even for me, it's the then what, right? It's either you need the software to run it through or a doctor who knows what it means and so I love that you're just taking all of those needs for the middlemen out and just really letting people have that change in their homes.
Yeah. And you can see there's sample reports that you can download and look at. I mean, it's just the main one. And we really tried to make it user friendly. It's extremely affordable. I mean, currently the testing is only $219, which is
Yeah.
a fraction of many of them.
Yes.
And,
Yeah, it is.
and you get like these reports. Oh, I've got my little filter. The
Yep.
reports are, if you can read, you can understand them because I'm a nurse and I
Which is
came
key.
from, I need people to understand what this is about because when people understand, then they can actually be empowered and comply.
Yes.
And then the supplementation is if you only order it once, it's $169, but you could do subscription and cancel it the next day and it's $149 a month, which for what all of that is it's not nothing, but it's definitely affordable when you look at all the bottles that you need to support all the different things.
Sure. Absolutely. Amazing. Well, Nurse Andy, I cannot thank you enough for sharing all of this with us. I really think it is changing the conversation. And I love that we have this shared goal of empowerment. This is why we do what we do. And so it's been such a pleasure to have you today.
It's wonderful to get to talk with you, and thank you for all that you're putting out there and all the people that you're helping. It's just wonderful, and you have a fantastic day also.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, remember that you can get the show notes and transcripts, including all of the links to all of the places, by visiting inspiredliving.show. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed this episode as much as I did. I'll see you next week.
Thank you for listening to Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity. Did you enjoy this episode? Please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts. If you'd like to get a transcript of this and every other episode, just head on over to inspiredliving.show or click on the link in this episode's description. There, you can also find everything we discussed in this episode, including links and information about our guest. You can even send in your questions to be answered by Julie in a future episode. That's inspiredliving.show. Until next time, this is Julie Michelson's Inspired Living with Autoimmunity podcast, helping you take your power back.